Well, hello and welcome, everybody. You are listening to Conversations with the Other Side. My name is Wendy Lucero. I'm a psychic medium, an author, a paranormal investigator, and I teach psychic development here in Denver, Colorado. I hope you're able to join me live every Saturday night on PITN Radio Network, where I will interview various guests on everything from life after death, angels, strange occurrences, intuition development, ghost stories, numerology, and other unexplained phenomenon. If you miss a live show, not to worry. All of our recordings can be found on iTunes, YouTube, Paranormal Into the Night Facebook page, and Spreaker.com, just to name a few. We are also a donation station. So if you enjoy our shows, we deeply appreciate a contribution to keep us up and running. Today's guest is Mary Van Meter. She is also a psychic medium and an award-winning international trade publisher. As a medium, she has the ability to sense spirit activity. She photographs them and has many conversations with the other side. Her career has taken her all over the world. She has been able to explore many national and international haunted sites such as Gettysburg, London, Pompeii, as well as many other extremely haunted locations here in Denver. Mary has been a docent at the Molly Brown House for 5 years. She volunteers at the American Museum of Western Art, also located in Denver. Mary has been a medium at the Brown Palace Hotel each Halloween, and she will be sharing some of her spine-tingling ghost stories with us tonight. So wherever you are, curl up with a warm blanket on this dark and cold night as we talk about ghost encounters for the next 2 hours. Welcome, Mary. It's a pleasure to have you on the show as my very first guest.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited, and I'm very honored to be your very first guest. We've had quite a few experiences together, and so I'm hoping people will enjoy some of our conversations and what we've done.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I'm sure Mary and I are going to be sharing a lot with everybody tonight. So I guess one of the first questions, that I want to ask you is when did you know that you were a medium, had these abilities?
I think it started in childhood. I used to tell my mother things, and she would say, well, how do you know that? And I would say, they told me. They told me. And she would say, well, who's they? And I'd say, I don't know who they are, but they just told me. And the more, that sounds kind of strange, so you kind of start parking it a little bit because you don't want everybody to know that, you are talking to somebody that you can't see. And I parked it for quite a few years, and then I just couldn't park it anymore. At college, I would know that something came out of the attic and walked down the hall and stood at my bed, and it kept going from there. So I've always known, there was something strange about myself.
And that's pretty much what I hear from all mediums, including myself. You kind of knew at an early age, and then it develops over time. Sometimes we push it aside, but the spirits never let you kind of, not embrace it, I guess.
Exactly.
So,
they come back.
Is this what got you interested in volunteering at all of these fantastic haunted museums and hotels around Denver?
No, I was a real introvert, almost to say that I have agoraphobia, where I don't really like to go out in public. And so I know it sounds strange, but the Molly Brown house, I loved her story. And the minute I walked into the house, I fell in love with the house. So I overcame all my shyness in order to tell these visitors that would come into the house her story. So it wasn't like, don't pay attention to me, but let me tell you about Margaret Brown's story. And to me, it was like getting out of myself and being able to share what happens in the house.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I do. I'm gonna have us start talking about the Molly Brown house because I know you've worked there for almost 6 years. Mm-hmm. Mary got me into the house volunteering for the last 2 years almost. So, God, it's been 2 years already.
Yeah.
So she had when Mary called me, we had our paranormal investigation team, Inner Soul Investigations, and we went in May of 2015. And we captured some amazing photos that I have shared on the Paranormal Into the Night Facebook page. So if people want to look at that, they can go to there and look at the pictures. But what was your first encounter, Mary?
Well, I walked into the house. It was the first day of docent training, and the fire alarms in the house started going off, and everybody said, "Oh, get out of the house." And I thought to myself, "Nope, that's them just saying hello." And I just kind of sat there, and then the alarms went off, and I thought, "Wow, it does have magic." And so from that point on, and they would just give little clues that they were there. I could smell like tobacco, and being a house that's 127 years old, you shouldn't smell any tobacco or anything like that. And so it just became a relationship that I built with them in the house. They don't really, the Molly Brown house is all really about telling her fabulous story. It's not about that the house is haunted, but
Right.
that's just the side benefit, that the house is haunted also.
Yes. And, and I didn't know a lot of the history about the Molly Brown house. Even though I grew up here in Denver, I had toured it like once when I was a kid. And I remember another time when I came in to talk to you about one of the events we were going to be having. And as I walked down the stairs, I was rubbing my hand down the banister, the stairs where it was all wooden. And I kept hearing a female saying how much she loved the woodwork. And I was like, yes, it's beautiful. This is very intricate Victorian woodwork. And so I left the house, got home, and I emailed Mary and said, some woman in spirit was talking about how much she loved the stairs. So do you want to tell that story?
Oh, well, the stairway, it's the original staircase, and it's golden oak. And it was the age of golden oak when the house was built. And Margaret loved the staircase so much, she put an extra staircase from the second to the third floor. She called Sears in and put the same kind of staircase up to the second to third floor. She was so proud of it. A lot of people didn't know a lot about her because they see the unsinkable Molly Brown, but she was so much more than, just a caricature you see in a movie. So, but she really did. She loved her house. It was a grand house. It was considered like a mansion. And, she came from nothing. And to be able to live in a mansion, it was quite special for her and her family.
Right. Well, and that was the first time I had actually encountered her. And once you had told me, oh my gosh, that was Margaret, I was so excited. Wow, I actually got to talk to her. So then after that, we built a relationship, obviously, and with her mother, too, who's very protective over the house to this day, right?
When Johanna was her mother, and when Johanna grew up in Ireland, she basically had outdoor plumbing, no electricity. So when Margaret moved Johanna into the house, Margaret traveled a lot. Johanna always stayed there. So she was the caretaker that always took care of the house, and she's still there today. So, yes. Yeah, she's still there today. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm going to be playing an EVP of Johanna in a little bit, so our listeners can hear what we captured. But so, I love that Margaret makes an appearance every time I come to the house now. I feel so honored to be able to talk to her. But I kind of want to go back a little bit because we investigated the Molly Brown basement because weren't the employees having a problem down there?
Well, one has been pushed. A lot of the employees felt very uncomfortable in the basement, and they thought that they were being watched. There were doors slamming in the basement, so they kind of didn't want to be down there. And so, of course, that's the area where we should go, right, when somebody doesn't want to be down there. So that's how we kind of got down there, is just to explore the basement to see why everybody was so, I'll use the word, creeped out down there.
Well, right, and that's when you had our paranormal team come out. And what amazed me is that people who tour the house, especially like that 6-year-old little girl, and she can hear the angry man in the basement, and he's yelling. So I thought that was an amazing story.
A lot of people, like I said, nobody goes into the basement but the employees. We don't, there's no public that's allowed down there or anything else. It was his space. It's his space. It's the spirit in the basement space. And so we kind of let him be down there. But they're going to be redeveloping that space for some educational space. So this is what's starting to, get a little bothersome down there because he doesn't like to be intruded on.
Well, exactly. And I wouldn't either, if I was a spirit. But I remember when you and I can't remember the date, but we attempted to do a soul rescue, which was basically crossing people over because we wanted to help the man. And there was another man. There was 2 at the time. And they're actually in the photographs that I posted.
The people should see those photographs. Those photographs are amazing. There's actually two men standing behind a post peeking out.
So the bigger one is the one that was maybe Margaret's caretaker?
Probably her male servant. And the other one is someone we had to figure out who he was.
Yeah, so this is the story I kind of want to tell because I think it's a very interesting story, and I'm kind of a history nerd. So I'm going to kind of go over how we figured out who the other little guy was. So basically, we attempted to do the soul rescue, which is basically crossing people over. And I kept feeling like there was an injured spirit, and he was hiding. And he kept telling me he was in a lot of pain, and he had been shot. So I started doing research later, and it came to find out that this guy who's hiding in the basement in one of the pictures was part of one of Denver's most notorious crimes. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that. Basically, on December 18th of 1922, a Federal Reserve Bank delivery truck was being loaded with money outside of the Denver Mint when three men pulled up in a black Buick. They jumped out, firing sawed-off shotguns. 50 guards returned fire, but the robbers still managed to get away with $200,000. And one of them was named J.S. Sloan. So that guy was hit during the gunfire, but the other two were never identified. So basically, this is where it gets interesting for us. Mm-hmm. The black Buick sped off to the east. One guard named Charles Linton was fatally shot in the chest, and the guards of the Denver Mint were absolutely certain that they hit at least one of the robbers. So an alert went out to all the hospitals to keep an eye out for a gunshot victim seeking medical help, right? Well, nobody ever showed up at the hospital. So 3 weeks later, in January of 1923, a black Buick was discovered in a garage in the Capitol Hill neighborhood just east of the Denver Mint. Now, this is where the Molly Brown house is located for our listeners who don't know Denver. Mm-hmm. So on the front seat of the Buick, the police made a gruesome discovery and found the frozen, bullet-ridden, and bloody body of a man named Nick Traynor, a.k.a. J.S. Sloan. So this Traynor guy, we believe to be the guy in the basement. He had been shot. I think he was still hiding because he kept telling me he was still hiding. He couldn't be found. He was hiding from the law. So
he had a lot of fright in him, too. He just had a lot of fright and he was on guard. He was really, kind of agitated. I would say very agitated.
Yeah, he was very agitated. So
he has some bad words with us, too. But
he did. He wasn't happy we were there. And he was just trying to hide, and we were just trying to talk to him. And my guides were like, this guy, you can help him if you bring up his mother. So I kept trying to cross him over saying, hey, your she's waiting for you on the other side. She really misses you. And we eventually got him to go. But the other guy, I guess Harold, is that what we were calling the big guy?
Yeah, we're calling him Harold, Harry. Mm-hmm.
Harry or Harold. He still didn't want to leave. So, we did do some good work down there. We did cross a lot of other spirits from the neighborhood, that were hanging around there. But
it was Harold, like you have to tell him it was really like a cold wind vortex as they were going towards the light. It was crazy how cold it was, how windy it was, and there's no wind, of course, down there. It was them racing towards the light, which was kind of amazing.
Yeah, that was because Mary did experience. Wasn't that your first soul rescue that you did with me?
Yeah, it was. Can I tell them what happened afterwards?
Absolutely.
So the next day I'm riding my bike and I come along the path, and in this tree are like 40 blackbirds, and they're all facing towards me, and they're all making this noise. And I said, who are you? Who are you? I came home and I immediately called Wendy and said, this is the strangest thing. Like 40 blackbirds are standing screaming at me. And tell them what you said about what happens when they cross over. After they cross over.
Yeah. So, okay. So what I didn't tell Mary, and I'll go backwards a little bit too, because during that soul rescue of the neighborhood, there was about 50 tuberculosis people, remember? And you said, hey, there was even a tuberculosis hospital like a block from here.
Right.
And I had gotten all those people to cross over. So what I didn't tell Mary was that spirits, when you cross them over, they will always come back to try to find a way to tell you thank you. And so when she saw the 50 black birds, I told her, I bet you that was their way to say thank you.
Well, it's incredible. I've never seen anything like that. They were all like pointed at me, all talking. It's like, and they shouldn't have been all in this one tree. It's like, Wendy, this was so strange. What is this? That was good. That made me feel really great.
It did. And so, I'm glad you got to experience that. Now, do you want to tell them, after we crossed this guy over, they were doing restoration on the front porch of the Molly Brown house?
So the Molly Brown house is under restoration. So if you ever want to visit it, they're putting it all back. It's 127 years old. So in some nooks and crannies, they've got newspapers shoved in the walls and, things that shouldn't really be in houses just shoved in there, just helter-skelter kind of thing. And so when they were redoing the front porch, they pulled out all the old newspapers, and the newspapers dated back to 1922.
Yeah, how crazy is that, right?
Right, is the same year of the bank robbery. So,
and I kind of felt like that was a validation for us too.
I did, I really did.
Yeah.
Why this house is because a lot of these old mansions are all torn down now. So maybe a lot of spirits used to walk by this house. They know the house. They're familiar with the house. It's been there forever. Maybe that's why they all had settled in the basement or something like that. I don't know.
I think so. Something's going on over there. Even every time I walk in there, something else happens.
It's an active house. I would just say it's a very, very active house.
Yeah, it is for sure. Let's see. So I guess, another thing I wanted to talk about was that you guys, the Molly Brown does afterlife events where they invite the public to come do a ghost tour.
They just started this year. They've put on the first two afterlife, Margaret Brown afterlife, before life, during life, afterlife. And they don't want to be known as a haunted house because unfortunately, they don't want a lot of ghost people over there and interrupting and things like that. They'd like to get Margaret's story out. But, there's all kinds of people that come and say, who does that black cat belong to? And we have to gently say, there is no black cat.
Right.
And the dust in the bathroom. Her mother had a bedroom outside the bathroom. This would be her first really indoor thing. One time, one of the people, one of our volunteers were cleaning the bathroom, and in the dust were tiny little footprints. The toilet's not even connected. Tiny little footprints in the dust. It's really a very, very active house. It's a great house. It's a great house.
Well, and what I thought was so cool, because Mary and I will do, we volunteer our time as mediums, and we give readings to the VIPs during the events. Mm-hmm. And so one thing I loved, we do our events in the library, which I have as part of the photographs online that people can see. So is it true that Margaret invited psychics and mediums into that room? Is that right?
That's the rumor that we've been told. We've been told, we've been told she liked psychics and mediums. Before she got on the Titanic, 2 weeks before she got on the Titanic, she actually visited a person that reads palms in Cairo. And the person that reads palms says, I see impending disaster, water, bodies everywhere. So she went and bought that good luck charm called a Ushapti. So yes, she did believe in, I don't know if you want to call it the occult spirit. A lot of suffragettes, kind of had that kind of thing going too,
Well, right. And, when I had talked to Margaret, one of the visits I had in the house, it was February of 2016. I actually sat and chatted with Margaret, and, I wrote down everything. We basically had an interview, and one of the things that she told me was that I think she had medium abilities. She was seeing the future, but she just didn't know what to do with it. And
at that time, it might have been a little bit, really out there for a woman of that time to say.
Yeah, a woman of the 1800s. You can see spirits, or people would have put her in the crazy house. Yeah. But I'm going to go and open an EVP from Johanna. Okay. That we got, and I'll play the whole thing, and then I'll play the shortened version. But it's basically Mary and I and my son I was filming on the second floor where the bedrooms were. We were in her room, and I'll let you listen right now.
Point of view, I mean, I'm seeking.
Hold on. So that was the wrong thing. Hold on, people. Sorry.
Johanna, that's okay. While she's finding that, I'll just say that Johanna did die in the house in 1905. Her husband, John, died in the house in 1899. They both died in the same bedroom.
Yeah.
We feel she's still there. We know she's still there.
Yeah, she's very present. Okay, here we go.
I'm going to bring them in later, and I would love if you'd like to talk to them and show an EVP. Just go to bed on the EVP for now. Would be great. Yeah, we'll be back. Thank you.
So I don't know if you could hear that really well.
That was hard to hear.
Was it hard to hear? Oh, darn it.
It seemed to have a lot of static on it when I heard it from my side.
Okay, so during that time, it was summer, and there were a lot of fans blowing inside the house because they don't have air conditioning. And so I think that's what you hear in the background, too. But Johanna said after we left her room, and we didn't hear it at the time, I just heard it when I played back the video, but she says, more. So let me see if I can play the trimmed EVP of her saying more. Okay, listen. Did you hear it?
Yeah, I heard it that time. It's hard to...
Yeah. So that was, we believe, Johanna, because we were just in her room. And so when I heard that at home, I immediately asked my spirit guides that I work with. I'm like, why did she say more? How odd of a thing to say. But she had to yell it over the fans to get, I guess, to be, imprinted on my camera, because I was just using a handheld camera.
Right.
And she said more. And my spirit guide said, well, it's because she didn't want you to leave. She wanted you to talk to her some more. So I thought that was really interesting.
She's a gem. I like her.
She really is. I really like her. She's definitely.
She's hardworking, and she's so proud of her daughter, and she's so proud of where her daughter's house was, and that they had so little and to make so much of themselves. It really. She calls it grand. She had a granddaughter, and she had a grand house, and she uses the word grand a lot.
Yes, and it's funny because when I had my interview with her, and actually. The Molly Brown Museum prints this out and gives it to the VIPs. Is that right? During their ghost tours?
Mm-hmm.
So what I could do, if you guys want, is I can read basically what I had written when I had my interview with her, if you guys would like. So I guess I will, since I think everybody's probably pretty interested in it. I don't know how much of this I will read. I mean, it's kind of long. But let's see. Yeah, I think I'll be okay. All right, so here is the interview. Again, this was done February 4th, 2016. And I asked Margaret, I said, is there anything that you want to share with the world in regards of your life? And she said, I know what most people are interested in, and they want to know about my Titanic experience. Right, Mary? So is that what most people come to the house?
Yeah, they do. They don't really care that she was, involved in this charity or this charity, women's suffrage, Ludlow massacre, all this, everything she did. She supported orphanages. Everybody wants to come and hear about the Titanic.
Isn't that the funny part? Yeah. So I said, okay, tell me what you went through during that time. And these are exactly her words. Exactly. Okay. She said, I had a dream which I understand now was a premonition. Days before the ice damaged the ship, in this dream, I saw people in water yelling for help. That made me nervous about taking the ship, but it was the only boat going to America at the time that I needed to get home. That is why I didn't hesitate getting on a lifeboat. And I told as many as I could not to wait too long. People thought I was being hysterical, but I didn't care about what they thought. I knew it would be very bad if I went back to lie down like many others. Right, Mary? So you want to tell me what...
She wasn't really supposed to be on that ship. She had an apartment in Paris at that time. She had a telegram that said, your first grandchild, who's 5.5 months old, is very sick. Come home right away. And the only ship sailing at the time was the Titanic, because she had 29 boilers, 25 double boilers. She took tons and tons and tons of coal. So all the smaller, slower ships, they didn't have any coal for those ships, so they upgraded everybody to the Titanic. So she really wasn't even supposed to be on the ship.
Right. So then she talked about the lifeboat that she was in, and there's a picture of it in the hallway of the Molly Brown House Museum.
Lifeboat number 6.
Yeah, lifeboat number 6. So she said, the lifeboat was small and tipped easily, but we managed to balance the weight good enough to feel secure in the open waters. It was very cold and my face became numb quickly. Even though I felt that I could handle the cold climate better than others, I had to keep telling them to cover their heads and face from the freezing winds, but they wanted to watch as the Titanic perished under the water.
Now, I want to tell you, when she got in that lifeboat, she had on 7 pairs of socks. She had on 2 fur coats. She had on silk on her hair, and a black velveteen pantsuit. She shared those socks with other people. She shared her coat with other people. The reason she could handle the cold better is she lived up in Leadville, where I swear the average temperature is only 28 degrees. She knows how to handle cold.
Exactly, and that's what she was trying to convey. And then she said, once the boat sank, it was as if a light switch shut off. Everything was dark, and people knew they were going to perish in the freezing water. It became quite silent, and we only had the night sky to look at. Everyone in the water became peaceful and prepared for death. Everyone in the boat sat there in sheer shock of the situation, and all I could think about was, who is being hysterical now? She said, people were sobbing, which made their faces even colder. I tried to take their minds off the horrific event, knowing that deceased friends and family floated nearby. And there was nothing we could do but row the boat to keep warm and keep our bodies moving. As the hours went by, we could see morning approach. And that was comforting to know daylight would warm us up a little. I thought the daylight would make it easier for a rescue boat to find us. When we saw another ship approach, we all cheered and thanked God for sending us help. Everyone was cold and tired. We all just wanted to lie down in a warm bed again. The passengers of the Carpathia were so generous to our plight, and many gave up their rooms so we could rest and have some food. The passengers could see how many people lost their lives in the water, and I believe it shocked them that we had survived the freezing night. As soon as we made it to New York, they had medical people ready, and news had spread about what had happened. So many were prepared for our arrival. People wanted us to tell our stories right away, but too many of us were still in mourning over the loss of friends and family. We didn't want to be bothered with it. So, I just thought, wow. And I could feel her sadness when she was talking to me about this. And, it kind of made me sad because I felt her emotions and her energy in it. Let's see, she said, I was too concerned with my grandchild being ill. Luckily, it turned out fine, but I was very worried about his survival when at the same time they were worried about my survival. After I was home for a time, I thought about what had occurred to everyone aboard the Titanic and how poorly the crew handled everything. I felt the need to stand up for all of the people who lost their lives. If I would have perished, I would want them to do the same for me. I spent time in New York to speak about everything I had witnessed, and the worst complaints from everyone that survived were the same. Why didn't they tell passengers the severity of the damage? They kept everything a secret until the last moments, and then people weren't prepared to leave their rooms. As the ship took on water, people began fighting one another and panic set in. If the crew would have been more honest, people would have gathered clothes, jewelry, and loved ones and boarded a lifeboat much faster. I didn't wait, but I also wondered when the crew would let us back on to gather our valuables. After I saw the panic, I knew they would never let us back on, and I was glad that I didn't wait like so many others. I thanked God for the dream, and I believed that was to let me know not to go back to my room. I didn't care if I appeared hysterical at the time, and it saved my life. I had a lot of work to do for others, so I did, and I was proud of what I accomplished. White Star Line had to pay money to the families that lost everything. So isn't that crazy? Isn't there Mary?
She has her insurance list in the house too. She was traveling with $27,000 worth of things, but of the $27,000, it was just going to be a quick trip. By the way, that little 5.5-month-old just had a milk allergy. He was fine. She shouldn't even have been on there. But the $20,000 was a $20,000 necklace that went down on the bottom of the Atlantic, and that was gold nuggets from where they first found. That's how they got wealthy, was finding this gold at the Little Johnny mine. And so her husband, JJ, made a necklace for her of those nuggets. And so when they were saying, what's the value? And it's invaluable. So they put $20,000 down on that necklace, and that's the value of, she had 27,000 that went down.
Yeah. Can you imagine just losing that much? And it still hasn't been recovered,
So many people had cars, dogs, everything. They were sailing back with their treasures. They had spent time in Europe, and they were sailing them all back, back to so many different things. But what's an interesting side story to that is I was in the Brown Palace, and I went into the room. A week after the sinking, she came home to the Brown Palace. She stayed in room 623. So I went into the room, and I was with the historian, and I was like, it's night. I'm looking out the window, and I said, oh my God, I'm so cold. I'm so cold. And so the historian's like playing the other part. She's like, what's the matter? I said, it's so cold out here. And I actually, got almost into Margaret's psyche, and she saw bodies. I saw them. The bodies that were floating by her, she recognized them. One of the guys just didn't have his glasses on, and that shocked her, that to know these people in the water that are floating by her. So it was horrific for her. It was horrific.
It was. And that's why I said, I felt her emotions as we spoke about this. Mm-hmm. And there was great sadness and frustration in how everything was handled. I really felt she was angry with White Star Line, boy.
The ship was practically unsinkable. It's a maiden voyage. It's practically unsinkable. And so, really, it goes from the bulkheads, it goes to the rivets on the side of the ship. It's all of those things.
Well, and she ended that part with, she said, we honored our rescuers for coming to our aid at just the right time and helping us so generously. So I know there's another picture in the hallway there that I saw where weren't they presenting the Carpathia with an award?
The Carpathia was about 50 miles south of the Titanic. She had 704 guests on board. She was on her way to Naples. And so the Titanic was sending out CQD, which is the old distress. It's the first ship to send out an SOS. Come help us. So save our ship. So she came through the ice field, and on May 29th, Margaret gave a loving cup to the Captain Rostron, who was the captain of the Carpathia. And she also gave those sailors little medals. She also gave Captain Rostron her good luck charm that, she feels kind of saved her life. She gave it to him. He valued it the rest of his life and carried it with him until his death.
Yeah, that's amazing. Gosh, I just have so much respect for that woman. And
she was in another ship accident too. In 1925, when the breakers caught on fire, guess who was standing at the breakers when it caused on fire? She helped lead people down the staircase, and so she was just kind of unstoppable.
Wow, that's amazing. I was so honored to be able to, as a medium, be able to speak with her directly like that. To this day, I will always hold that experience very close to my heart. So,
and what you didn't tell the audience is how she was sitting, and that's and you've known that she had her ankles crossed, and you would not have known that was the proper way to, lowly cross her ankles like that, not cross your legs, but cross your ankles. And you said that to me. I thought, oh God, that's her.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's how she came to me. She was sitting in this beautiful chair, but she had her legs, but her ankles were crossed. She was just very proper, I could tell. So yeah, that was my my interview with her. You know, we talked about some other things about Colorado. I did ask her, you know, what she liked about living in Colorado, and her answer was the majestic mountains and the weather was agreeable until late of winter when the weather was cold. So it's kind of funny how, you know, she spoke like that. You know, and I said, how do you feel about your house becoming a museum? And she said, I like being honored in Denver. I enjoyed my time in New York, but Denver was always my home. I missed it when I was away. I missed the friendly people and found New York people to be more guarded than what I was accustomed to in Denver. I did enjoy the culture in New York, and they seemed ahead of Denver in culture and shopping. They had things I never knew existed. So I thought that was kind of cute.
Great. And she did die in New York. So, you know,
she did die. She was what, 65?
65. She, October 26, 1932, about 2 p.m, they found her body at the Barbizon Hotel. She had a stroke. She had died of a stroke. When they did an autopsy, they found out she had a brain tumor, possibly for the last 20 years of her life. So I like to do 1932 minus 20 is 1912, the year of the Titanic.
The year of the Titanic. Oh my gosh.
That's very horrific. It was very horrific for her. I'm not even sure she ever recovered from it.
No, you know, I don't think I mean, how could you? That would really weigh heavy on your soul.
You know, people that died when you were one of the only 705 people got off the Titanic, 2,228 get on. Half are women, half are men. She knew those people. She'd been with Captain E.J. Smith 2 other times. She came over on the Olympic, which was the sister ship to the Titanic. She knows that ship.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a crazy story. It's just a crazy story.
That is a crazy story. And so I'm going to go from that, because that's pretty much where I left off with Miss Margaret, and I still will come visit her and anytime. Now, you mentioned the Brown Palace, so yes. What I'm going to have you tell us more about the amazing history and your personal experience as a medium there. And for people who don't know the Brown Palace, it's basically another Denver landmark in Capitol Hill. It's not too far from where Margaret Brown's house is. And past guests include, of course, the unsinkable Molly Brown. And presidential guests include Theodore Roosevelt, William Taft, Warren Harding, Harry S. Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, and Bill Clinton that I know of. So
every president since Clinton, every president except Obama has stayed there.
That's amazing. This hotel, let me paint a vision for our listeners. Imagine that it's the late 1800s in Denver, and people from all over the country are flocking to the west, seeking fortunes in gold and silver. Everyone is stopping in Denver, either on their way to or from the mountains. Some people settled. Obviously, Margaret Brown was one of them. Some people moved on, but all needed a place to stay. So they began work in 1888 on this Italian Renaissance building. They used Colorado red granite and Arizona sandstone for the exterior. And let's see, the Brown Palace is still, right, one of the grand hotels.
Absolutely. It has never, since it opened in August of 1892, it has never closed, not even one day in its history.
Wow, not even one day. And isn't it the first fireplace, like fireproof building that they ever built?
I'm not sure about that, but it probably is, just because of the walls and things.
I read that to this day, like it was one of the very first fireproof structures because of the sandstone. And, you know, go ahead.
It's got a Masonic background to it. The Masonic Knights Templar were very big out here in Denver. It's got a triangle side. It's, three-sided hotel. It's actually built on top of an artesian well that just goes down 700 feet. So now they can do their own beer using their own artesian well. But, I mean, when you go into an artesian well 700 feet below ground, I think there's something spiritual with that also, That alone is something. Yes.
Well, and now I saw some old pictures, and when it was completed, it was Denver's tallest building, this hotel, for a long time.
Beautiful.
I thought that was really interesting.
It's still a Victorian splendor. It has, onyx walls, and it's magnificent. It's magnificent, yes. But it's also extremely haunted. And so 3 years ago, we started doing some ghost paranormal events at the Brown Palace for Halloween. And we've sent some mediums in there and did some exploration. And some of the wildest things, it's like the hotel is still playing 1901. The women are still bustling down the atrium, and I was sitting meditating, opening myself up, and this man came to me, a spirit man came to me, and I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm the doctor." And I said, "The house doctor?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "What year is this?" He said, 1901. He said, "Can I show you how I doctor to these women?" I thought, that's crazy. Okay, yes, please. And so he sat in the top of their bed and he held their hand and comforted them. And so when the historian comes down to me finally, I said, "Hey, did you have a house doctor?" She said, "Oh, early on." I said, "In 1901, did you have a house doctor?" And she said, "Absolutely, they did." So, I mean, and there's men's club. And when we walk into the men's club, they stop playing their card games. The spirits stop playing their card games. They look, they give glaring, sometimes they say nasty words, and they tell you you're not really wanted in this room. And so we kind of, move on and everything else. But there's so many rooms that we've had so many, paranormal events in, and we catch orbs all over the place. And, they don't want to say in a hotel, of course, like in any hotel, people die. They die. There's suicide, murder, all kinds of things. So those kinds of spirits still linger a lot in that hotel. Absolutely.
Well, and when I went with you and Deborah Faulkner, who's the historian of the Brown Palace, Deborah didn't tell me anything, and she wanted to see what I'd pick up in all these rooms. So I took a lot of photos, and those are the ones I posted online for people to see. But that one room, the gentleman only room, where they would do cigars and brandy, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That room was very creepy, and you did get a sense that you were not welcome. And I felt like a crawling sensation on my feet. And
Deborah has the same problem.
Yeah. Did Deborah say that?
Yes, the rug starts like it's moving underneath you. And this is a woman is not a medium, and the rug starts moving underneath your feet. It's a bad room. It's a bad room. But
but wasn't that the same room they used for Eisenhower's presidential election?
I'm not sure if it was that one or if they went into the Onyx room, but that was kind of Eisenhower's West home. He had us there. And
I did post a picture of the suite, the Eisenhower suite. Where he had played golf and he chipped the mantle in there.
He actually chipped the mantle with his golf swing. Yes.
Yeah.
And the Beatles have been there. And, they've had an employee who jumped off the 7th floor. It's an open atrium. She wrapped herself in a sheet because she was housekeeper. She wrapped herself in a sheet so that she wouldn't make a mess. Of all things. Right. And so she hit one of the things coming down, and, it was a mess. But so there's this one area of the hotel, and I've stumbled into it. It's awful. And then we found out that was where one of the jumpers had gone off also. And so it had so much energy. A person before they're going to, commit suicide seems to leave a lot of energy in that area, and it's just frightful, and it's all kinds of bad things. And you can actually be walking down the hall and stumble into that area, and you go, "What the heck was this?" And it's where they would jump off, and it was an open atrium, so you can imagine.
Well, exactly. And remember when you guys were taking me through a section of that hotel, and there was a wall there, but I kept saying that there was no wall here. Somebody jumped over this part. And even Deb Faulkner said, yeah, that was all open and somebody did jump.
Yeah. So they made, when after the war, not many people could afford a nice hotel. So they put the 2 upper floors as apartments, and they glass walled those off because there's usually a pianist down in the atrium, and you can hear music. So when it's all walled off up there, it's a sound barrier. But when the people were jumping, it wasn't all walled off.
Right. Yeah, that was creepy going into a lot of those rooms that were apartments. Mm-hmm. And I did not even know that the Brown Palace had that. So that was interesting for me. And I just remember that guy in the closet.
Oh gosh, there's a lot of there's a room in there, and I won't tell you which room it is because I don't think they want me to tell you what room it is. And we had three mediums, the other two mediums, too. We were in there, and she always says, and I'm not sure I'm allowed to cuss, but she always says bad words to us, like "get the F out" and "leave my room," things like that. So we were in there just over Halloween, and she yelled out, "Bitches, bitches."
Ooh.
And I thought, and I said to the other mediums, I said, "Oh my God, she just called us this." And as we were leaving, she yelled out she added, we're older women, right? And so she yelled out the word "fat bitches." And it's like, wow, you had to add that in. You had to put the word "fat" on that. It wasn't enough that you did bitches, but then you had to add "fat" too. And later on that night, one of the mediums was telling the story of what she does in there, and she got punched in the throat.
That's the same place I got choked for the first time. I'd never been attacked, and I was choked.
Shut everybody up. So she wants to shut everybody up. She hits him in the throat. She chokes you. She does all kinds of stuff. But I won't tell you what room it is because, boy, they would be mad if I told you what room.
Well, I remembered the room, and I don't even know the room number, but I just remember the room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
well, this is in the middle of the night, phones go flying across the room. They've had so many people check out of this room at 3 a.m. and just going, "I can't handle this. I can't handle this." We've caught orbs sitting in chairs, orbs in the beds, all kinds of. It's a very, very active room. That's not a room. It's mean room. I wouldn't stay in that room. I like those kinds of experiences, but boy, I wouldn't stay in that one.
No, I don't blame you. And hopefully the listeners will not go there and say, "Hey, can I stay in that really haunted room?"
Room on the 8th floor. Where everybody leaves.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah.
So, and you do the Halloween thing there, right?
Right. We do. I used to go into a woman, Mrs. Crawford Hill, died in room 904. She lived the last 15 years of her life there. She was 91. And so she had this big mansion, she had lost just about everything. So for the last 15 years, and she's very proper. She started Denver Society. She's very, very proper. So if you come in with like tattoos or short dresses, she just cringes. She just cringes. And a lot of times I like to sit in this one corner because she'll hide behind me. She doesn't like people coming in her room. She gets so tired of people coming in her room around how it's her room. It was her room for 15 years.
Yeah.
It's the room she died in. So they come and the story is, well, it's a long story. I don't know if I don't want to go into that. Go ahead. Okay. So after she left her mansion, they started redoing the mansion. This is after she died. Years and years later, it becomes Kobe Bryant's law firm and John Benet Ramsey's law firm. And so it's a big law firm. So they're redoing the walls and cutting down the walls and redoing everything. There was a phone call to the fire department, and the fire department used to race over there, and there was nothing there. They'd race over again and again. So finally the fire department called the management. The management says, "There's no phones in here." Then the next time they're calling the police from the house. Police kept coming over. Still no phone. So now she goes into room 904. They're giving a tour about her and one of the affairs she had in her life. The front desk starts getting a phone call from 904, and they just hear static and static. So every time they give a tour, there's a phone rings down in the front desk of the Brown Palace. It was no phone in 904. They were redoing all of those rooms up there. Mrs. Crawford Hill loves to call and complain about things that are being changed in her rooms or in her house. And it's true. I mean, these were lawyers that were telling me these stories. I mean, I know lawyers lie. No offense. But, they didn't have any reason to lie about that, nor did the Brown Palace. So Mrs. Crawford Hill loves to call and complain. But there's only static on the line, And it was really funny. There was no phones when they were redoing the house. There were no phones in the house either. So she's quite clever.
She is. I encountered her. You guys took me into that room, and yes. I had encountered her, and she did talk to me a little bit, and it was very sad. But
she had a bad affair, and it was looked down on. She was high society. It was looked down on. Nobody came to visit her. She was very lonely towards the end of her life. They tied her in a wheelchair until she's 91. Can you imagine having to live with an affair? Nobody comes to visit. It's a very sad room. It's a very sad room.
Yeah, and when Deb took us up to the roof, and I was surprised they have don't they have like bees? They had bees all over the place, like
they have a salon. They have what do you call that? Like a salon up there, and they sell all this bee products and stuff like that. They have bees up on the roof now. Yeah,
they make their own honey and they serve it at the hotel. So I thought that was really cool. And then I saw Deb showed me the actual signature from Margaret Brown in the booklet she had.
Well, there's another little restaurant there. Pardon me. There's a restaurant there called Palace Arms, and it has Napoleon Bonaparte's. A lot of Napoleon Bonaparte's actual, the thing he went into battle with, and
I showed those.
Yes. Say, why would Napoleon have this? Well, the man that used to own the Brown Palace traveled the world. He had more money than he should have had, basically, and he bought whatever. So Napoleon Bonaparte's pieces are still in that Palace Arms restaurant. And we catch orbs up there all the time. You could always see there's something going on in that restaurant too. But
that's a photo I shared. Actually, is the antique of the dueling pistols.
Oh yeah,
yeah, from the 1670s. Oh my gosh, I thought that had so much energy when I walked by.
Oh, yeah. They also had these little men. This man was imprisoned, and he collected, and so he carved faces of all the other prisoners, took scraps of their clothes, and made like a band. This one played the flute, this one played this. And so they have all the original band members from these people that were imprisoned during Napoleonic era. It's really... It's a wild place. It's a historic place. It's another wild place.
That is I was surprised at the darkness that I picked up in the hotel, because it's such a elegant 5-star hotel.
It was the who's who of men. It was the most powerful men in Denver. They could make or break whatever they wanted to do. These guys own Denver. So look if you come into town and you want to start a business, I bet it was squashed by these men. You know what I mean? They were the kingpins of that time.
Well, exactly. And then I found out that, the infamous Denver crime boss, Jefferson Soapy Smith, he stayed at the Denver Palace, or the Brown Palace, right? That's like
Soapy
one
Smith?
of the
one up in Alaska.
I don't know where he was from, but he was a crime boss, and he was known to stay at the Brown Palace.
You would stay only at the Brown Palace. That's where you would stay. Even if you were a gangster, that's where you would stay.
Exactly.
Yes, and the finest of the dining, the finest of the wines, the finest of finishings, that's where you hang out.
It's a beautiful place. So I think, if any of our listeners ever get a chance to come to Denver, just even go into that Brown Palace and just tour it. It's beautiful.
Ask for Deborah. She gives tours all the time there. And just ask her for the ghost, and then ask her for the ghost tour and say, you've heard about the ghost tour. I bet she'll roll on you.
I know, right? I'm going to have her on one day, but yeah, I'm sure she'll appreciate Wendy and Mary.
Tell everybody.
Tell everybody. So going from that building, you also volunteer at the American Museum of Western Art, right?
Yes. And the building is called the Navarre. It was built by the same architect that built the Brown Palace, but this one was built just slightly earlier in 1880. Right. It was a girls' school. Then when it closed, it opened up as the Hotel Richelieu. It was a bordello across the street from the who's who of Denver. So now, if you were a guy that came and had some business to do, you would not walk across the street to the bordello, would you? Because you could not. That was, you couldn't do that. So they had a little tunnel. It was the old coal tunnel, because the architects built both buildings. They had a little coal tunnel under the street, and it has a barrel roof on it. It's still there. The Brown Palace filled in their side, and the Navarre has their side opened up a little bit. And they would have a hand crank little cart. You would just come under the street and over to the bordello. What a fascinating, it's feet from your door, and nobody has to know the difference. Nobody knows anything about it.
Well, and I remember when we were in one of the rooms that faced that up in the Brown Palace, and I kept telling you, I swear I keep seeing spirits of women who were like flaunting themselves on this balcony next door.
So there's a cupola and then there's balcony. So if you were trying to get the men across the street to come across your street, what would you do? You would show your wares a little bit. So I'm sure, and there was a lot of glass up there. So I'm sure they showed their wares, and you can't go across the street because even, in the early 1900s, you can't do that. You're respectable, you can't do it. So you go under the street.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, but.
Interesting. It's an interesting building. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I thought, I know you volunteered at both buildings, so you've had interactions with a few of the prostitutes that were.
I have to admit that just recently, which was kind of strange. I think last week I was getting ready to do a tour there, and I saw this woman busying around. She was an older woman running from room to room to room, which was really strange. And I always see sometimes the men energies around there. I can pick up the men energy. I've never seen the women energy. I said, who is this? What is this? I said, what year is this? And she said 1903. Well, in 1904, it was shut down. The mayor of the town shut down the brothel in 1904. She said it's 1903. I didn't know that. I had not known that. So I said to one of the security guards, I said, oh, God, there's a woman's ghost up here today. And they said, oh, you should talk to the head of security. I said, why? He said, he saw a woman 2 days ago up here in a purple dress. He said, first of all, when it's dark there, it's really dark. He heard footsteps going along the wood floors, and he looked up and he saw a swish of a purple dress. But so that's the head of security and myself both caught, and I thought she told me she was the boss. So I figured that she was probably the madam. But, we've had to chase back across underneath the street. Believe it or not, this sounds so silly. There's a piece of cardboard that blocks the tunnel. It's just a simple piece of cardboard. One day it was broken, and I didn't know it was broken, so I was up there and I said, "Who's this man in this place?" And long story short, we had to go down, fix the cardboard, sent him back over to his hotel, the Brown Palace. About a month ago, I walked into the main room, and there were all these men. There were like 4 or 5 men. They were in their 40s and 50s. They were loving it. They were having so much fun, laughing, giggling, all this kind of crazy stuff. It was almost disruptive for me to try to give a tour on this. So I went to the manager and I said, my God, what the hell is going on in here? And she said, oh my God. She said, we had a water leak. I took the cardboard down. I said, oh my God, you got to get them out of here. Put the cardboard back up again.
The men really were spirits, right?
Yes, there's men spirits.
Okay.
And it's just a piece of cardboard. But believe it or not, when the cardboard's up, they don't come through. So one time the cardboard broke, one came through. She took it down to fix the water leak, and there were like 4 or 5 of them. It's like, holy God, send them back to the hotel. They're too disruptive. They're just having a wonderful time here.
Well, yeah.
Back to the hotel. I mean, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's crazy that they like to just run across the street. They were so happy. It was like,
I'm sure,
like a fraternity party up there. It was like a fraternity party.
They were happy because the ladies of the night were going to be
they were over in the
fun with them.
Yeah, and it's an art museum with beautiful art, 300 pieces of art. We don't talk, we don't do any of that kind of stuff. We talk about art in there. So it's kind of crazy when they come over there. It's like, you don't belong here right now. You must go back to the hotel.
Well, and that's the fun part about being a medium, because you get to see the deeper and darker secrets of a building or a location. And that's
as long as you're not too afraid of them, I'm not afraid of them. There's nothing malicious about them. They were just having merriment, a lot of merriment. So it's like, no, you ought to go home now. So, when you're open for that kind of stuff, it is kind of fun when you can deal with them,
It is. I love that. I love it so much.
But you and I know the dark side. You and I both know the dark side.
Yeah, we for whatever reason we do, and it just, speaking of the dark side, we're going to talk about Central City, which is basically another historical ghost town here in Colorado. It's Mary and I have had numerous encounters with spirits over the years, sometimes together, sometimes alone. But I kind of want to let the listeners know the history of the town before we go too much into it. So Central City is located in the Rocky Mountains. It's 35 miles west of Denver. So if you guys ever want to come visit, just head on I-70 West. And there's an exit there, and it'll take you right to Central City. It's actually a gambling town, so a lot of people from other states and in our state too will stay the night up there. It's like a mini Las Vegas.
Mini Las Vegas.
It's a very mini Las Vegas, but it's a lot of fun up in the mountains. But in 1859, John Gregory, he discovered the Gregory Lode in a gulch near Central City. Within 2 weeks, the gold rush was on, and within 2 months, the population grew to 10,000 people, all seeking their fortunes. William Byers, he was the founder of the Rocky Mountain News here. Him and a bunch of his companions pitched like their tents in the open ground right in the center of the mining district up there. And that's how they named Central City. That's how Central City was born. And so soon, the leading mining center of Colorado, it became known as the richest square mile on earth. Mm-hmm. And I know isn't there a stone monument of Gregory up on the east end of the city?
It's in between Black Hawk and Central City right there in the center. But, it's right there. It's still there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if, that's something kind of neat that you can go see. But I know in 1874, most of the buildings were destroyed by a fire. The town was actually rebuilt, this time with brick and stone. And all of those buildings from the 1800s, are still there today. Let's see. Okay, so this is where it gets fun. So 1 mile west of Central City lie 3 cemeteries. And they have hundreds of ornate stone markers with headstones dating back to the 1860s. So, like our paranormal team, Inner Soul Investigations, we host free public events in the summer where we take the public up there and we break off into small groups and we kind of do a ghost hunt. So Mary and I decided on November 1st, there's also a legend. Do you want to talk about the legend of the Columbine lady?
Yeah, I will. But there are 11 cemeteries in this little area, 11 cemeteries. Oh. So with so many people, they didn't all make it into the cemeteries. Sometimes they're just put in the mountain wherever, along the creeks, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of dead up there.
A lot.
And so a lot of dead. Oh my God. So one of the cemeteries is called the Masonic Cemetery. And there was a man named Jonathan, I forgot his last name, and he died. He was only 23 years old, died November 1st. John Cameron died. What year was that? November 1st, what year?
1887, I believe.
So he's young, he's handsome, everything else. He dies very, very young. So for every year after that, on like April 1st and then on November 1st, the anniversary of his death, a woman comes over the hills all dressed in black and leaves columbine flowers at her grave.
Right.
So she does it at dusk. And so naturally over time, there's been a lot of people that have tried to photograph her, catch her, take the flowers, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where Wendy and I both had the bright idea that says, okay, November 1st, guess where we're going? And then you can take over from there. We're going to Masonic.
So, and I want to kind of go over some of the stories that I had heard from before, and I had never been up there. But there was a story of these, it was like a group of teenagers, and they went up there on one of the dates that she's known to appear. And one of the girls found the fresh flowers on that grave, and she thought it was a joke. She thought somebody put them there as a joke. So she took the flowers with her, and on the way back in the car, they were all yelling at her saying, "You shouldn't have taken the flowers." Well, she had laid them in the seat next to her, and the next thing you know, she looked over and the flowers had already turned to dust. So that was a creepy story that I'd heard. And then I did hear another story of other people being up there, and when she appeared, 2 men tried to grab her, and she, like, in spirit, she went into the trees. So of course, like Mary said, we decided, well, how much fun would it be to drive an hour up to Central City and watch this lady appear? So I actually did a live feed, and I posted it on Inner Soul Investigations Facebook page. If anybody wants to go watch it, it's kind of comical. But during that time, it was funny because I had set up another camera in addition to doing the live feed, and some spirit messed with my camera, and they kind of knocked it over like they had been touching it. And so I have that video also posted. But after I fix the camera, you can hear a female say hi in a really loud whisper. So I actually kind of want to play that. Hopefully you guys can hear it. But this girl ended up following me home, and I'll talk more about her, about who she is. But I want to play this here. Let's see. Okay. Did you hear the hi?
I heard it. Yeah, I heard the hi.
You hear like something right before that, and I can't make it out. And then you hear hi. And so I'll play it one more time just to make sure everybody can hear it. So that's it. It's all hi. So I didn't hear that at the time, of course. Again, I was going through the video and I could hear it, and it sort of surprised me, I guess you could say. But she told me, so she followed me home. She told me her name was Elizabeth, which we need to go find her gravestone, Mary.
Okay.
But she told me her name was Elizabeth, and she was 20 years old. She said she died of the flu in 1895. And then so I asked her, why did you stay around so long? And she said because she wasn't ready to go, and she had her whole life in front of her, so she stayed behind to watch everybody else live their lives. I mean, how sad is that, right?
That's very sad.
So I told her, I said, do you know what year we're in? And she said no. So when I told her, she was literally shocked that she had stayed in spirit so long around that area. So, she was ready to cross over. So I did end up crossing her over. But I think she was attracted to us at the cemetery because we're mediums. But I had my son there who's also the same age. And spirits are attracted to other people the same age. They're attracted to people who they know they can trust. They don't just communicate with any medium. Spirits have to trust and like your energy. Kind of the same as you do when you meet somebody for the first time. You either like them or you don't based on the energy they put out into the world. So spirits are very much like that too. And I think that's why Mary feels so attracted, because the spirits love you up there.
I love them. I'm up there all the time. It's kind of crazy, like going to these cemeteries. Like I think that maybe I am insane, but I'm not. I just like being around them. There's so many of them up there. I'm comforted by them. I don't know. They like me. I like them.
Yeah, and I've been up there several times too. I've never experienced anything scary until the night that you and I and my son went up there. We kind of got a little bit more than we bargained for, which I'm going to use this as a teaching tool for all of our listeners. But I don't know how we start this. I'll just go into, first I encountered another spirit guide. Let me go into that story first, because he's really significant to this. So my son, who's also a medium, he has a spirit guide of this huge Italian-looking guy. He wears a pinstripe suit and smokes a cigar. And, my son talks to him all the time. He's from New York. He was part of the mafia of the 30s. And so the reason he's my son's main protective guide is because he feels responsible for my son being gunned down in that life. We did a past life regression with my son one time. And, to hear him talk about that whole life was just amazing. So anyway, this guy, he was supposed to have protected my son in that life, but he failed. So now he protects him in this life. Now, I've never encountered another person's spirit guide before until that night. So that opened my eyes to a lot of interesting things. So we went up to, after we got kicked out.
No, are you going to go back to the warning we had before we even went up there? We had a warning.
I forgot about the warning. Go ahead and tell them the warning.
Okay, so Wendy and I are doing readings, just free readings at the Molly Brown House. It was Victorian Horrors Night. Come in, get 15 minutes with us. We'll try to tell you what we see around you and everything else. And my grandmother popped in, it was really weird. Matthew, her son, got it. She got it. I got it. It was almost like the three of us got my grandmother at the same time. And she was trying to warn about a cemetery in Central City that she couldn't protect us. She's a big protector. She couldn't protect us. And all three of us were getting her at the same time. And all three of us were getting the warning that she was trying to say, I can't help you if you go in here. It's bigger than I am.
Right.
Okay, so let's just do that. So I say, oh, geez, don't be such a drama queen, Grandma. Come on, I go to cemeteries all the time. Shut up. Okay.
Right? And that's kind of how you were. And I was just like, she's very adamant that there's something waiting for you. And and we didn't even think we were going to go up to see the Columbine lady at this time. That came up like a couple days later. So anyway, so we got kicked out of the Masonic Cemetery because apparently it's private property. And if you watch the live feed I did, you'll see us getting kicked out. So we turned off the live feed and decided that, we already drove an hour up there. So we went to the Central City Cemetery. Now, I've been there many times. I've never had a problem there. We take the public there. But as we were walking in, Mary starts to flip out a little bit.
A lot. No, I was flipping out a lot. I was like, something's way wrong here. There is something way wrong. And Wendy wants to, let's go further down the path. Let's go. And I'm like, oh, let's not. Oh, let's not. Just a little bit further. Just a little bit further. I'm like, oh my God. I'm starting to really freak. I could hear them surrounding us. It was.
Well, I could see them. Yeah.
It was. You could see them. They were manifesting. There was an Indian Native American coming running over the hill. We could hear twigs from the north, south, west, and east side of us.
Yeah.
It was starting to surround us, and they were menacing. I mean, I really, the last time that was Gettysburg, I had an experience like that. I've never felt that kind of menacing. It was so bad. I'm just trying to tell Wendy, please, we got to get out of here. This is too much. They were angry. I don't know if it was because of Halloween or what it was, but oh my God.
Oh, it was bad. It was, and and of course, I'm not scared because I know I have a lot of, angelic protection, and I have my spirit teams who walk with me, and I call in Archangel Michael a lot. So as we're walking, and now people, you have to remember, this is pitch black dark in a cemetery in the mountains. So we're walking down this path that's only, visible by moonlight. And I keep seeing people manifesting like Mary said. And I was starting to feel uneasy, but she was really scared. And so all of a sudden, I felt a spirit like jump in front of me. And I felt his hand like push me back as if to stay like stop moving. And it pushed me, so I lost my balance a little bit. And it wasn't like it was a menacing spirit pushing me, but it was like a protective spirit. And that's the first time I encountered my son's spirit guide. It was him, which I found out later. At the time I didn't know. I found out later. So, I guess the lesson... the lesson here.
The lesson is always have your phone there that has that flashlight on it. So we were agreeing, Matt, turn on the flashlight because I can't have them come up behind me like this. I can't, Matt, just don't let them come up behind us. They were really like racing up to us.
They were trying to charge us. They were running at us, and you could feel them and hear the gravel. And of course, we're the only ones out there. And so we're just kind of like trying to make it back to the car. And Mary's like, please don't let him get in the car.
Then Wendy made Matt stop at the gate, which is the entrance into the cemetery. And we started taking Matt's pictures. There's all these orbs all over him. Yeah. And I started shaking it like, don't, Matt, you can't let them come out. You don't let them in my car because they've jumped in my car before. I was begging, please don't let them jump in my car tonight.
Yeah, and I actually posted that picture on the Facebook pages. So if people want to see it, my son is in the front of the gates of the cemetery at that time when Mary was freaking out.
And you can see the orbs, like they want to come after us. They really want to come out of the cemetery after us. And that's where it gets frightful when they do that kind of aggressive move.
Exactly. And, and that's what I want to tell people who go looking for stuff like this. You can get more than you bargain for, because yeah, you don't know who's watching and waiting for you in any location. I mean, there is evil in this world that roams the earth looking for victims. And that's what happened here. And I'll go into that. What happened was I stood at the gate and we were going to get in our cars. Mary did not want them following. So I turned around and I said, back the F off, because, you have to be kind of stern. And I did not want them coming out of those gates and getting in our cars. So I was telling them, back off. We're leaving. We're not going to bother you anymore. Trying to be respectful. So we get in the car and we go home. Well, that night, my son was downstairs and I was, of course, in bed, and it was about 3 a.m. And I could hear a man yelling at me. I mean, really mean, hateful words. And so I woke up and I'm like, what is going on? And as a medium, you kind of get used to stuff like that. So I told, my guides, and I called in angels. I said, I don't know who this is, but you need to take care of him. So I'm sitting laying in bed, I should say, not sitting, but I'm laying in bed in the dark by myself. And I hear a scuffle, like in the bedroom. And I'm thinking, what in the world? So I just keep laying still. And all of a sudden I hear this guy with an accent, and he goes, and I kid you not, he goes, don't worry about it. He's sleeping with the fishes now. So I, of course, sat up in the dark and I said, hello. I said, is this Matthew's guide, which is my son's name? And I hear, yes. And I said, are you the one that jumped in front of me at the cemetery? And he said, yes. And so I said, okay, well, thank you for that. And I said, what do you mean sleeping with the fishes? So basically what my guides and what they do, which I'll talk more about that, but anytime you're under attack by something evil,
I say run, but go ahead.
Well, if you call for help, your spirit guides and angels. So basically he took care of him, and he told me, the next day after I was more coherent, I meditated and I wanted to talk more about it because I needed to understand what was going on. And they told me, yes, he followed you from the cemetery, and he was looking for a victim. And since I challenged him at the gates, he decided I would be a lot of fun to harm. So he was coming after me. Thank God he didn't follow you home, Mary, but
oh God,
he followed me, and my son actually encountered him earlier in the night when he was downstairs. So I think my son's guide scared him away, and that's why he came to my bedroom, which, they're not allowed to do that, but he was trying to get in and he was trying to harm me. Of course, I have a lot of protection. So, they did get rid of him, and they told me anytime the living asks for help like that, and if there's a spirit that's pure evil that has no remaining light within their soul, spirit guides and angels have the right to basically dissolve that soul back into the light. So that was an eye-opener for me. I mean, I knew how to kind of neutralize their power before so they can't misbehave. But that was a real eye-opener and something that I'm going to write about in my new book that I'm writing. But, yeah, I just, I don't want people going and looking for this stuff. If you don't know what you're doing, if you're not protected, you've got to understand that spirits were human at one time. They do have feelings. They do get upset, especially if you are rude or disrespectful towards them. Some are attached to places or locations for whatever reason. Some don't understand they died because they're still feeling alive. So it takes them a while to understand what happened. And I know a lot of the ones that I encounter and Mary encounters, they still have a belief that death will be scary. But since it wasn't, they don't believe they're actually dead. And they have tons of other reasons, like, if their religion, if they feel they sinned, or their religion, and they think they're going to get punished.
Or murdered someone, they know they don't want to go to the other side to face what they did. And we run into some of those too,
Well, especially up there, because they did bury a lot of outlaws,
murders, everything that, was wrong. They put them in the ground up there. But again, should really warn them that they can jump in your car too. And it's almost like someone's sitting with you in your seat and you go, what the heck is this? And it's a spirit. So you really got to keep them out of your car because it's distracting.
And I just wanted to... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we had to stop the car further down the hill. I was texting her, I can't handle this. I'm so scared. Because that was so menacing and mean. We had to pull over downtown Central City to say, okay, they're not in your car. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Are they on my bumper? Scary. Are they on my bumper? Where are they? I know they're bad.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. But I will share a funny story. I was staying up there one night and we went up to the cemetery, me and my son, and we were driving back, and it was in the morning, so it was a beautiful sunny day driving down the mountain, and some spirits got in my car because they wanted help crossing over, I found out later. But the funny part was it was a woman and a man, and the woman kept saying, I can't believe that a woman can handle this big piece of machinery, because I have a big SUV. And then I heard her say, oh my God, this is too fast for me. I don't know if I can handle it. So I slowed my car down. And then they were like, that's better. But they were amazed at our technology, I guess, and that a woman could actually drive and handle this kind of machinery. I thought that was pretty cute.
Funny. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd go back up to that cemetery anytime soon, but I love that one cemetery we go to. And I'm just really, and that's got a lot of rapists and everything in it. They just know me. I visit so often that it's nothing menacing, but your cemetery's a bad one.
Well, not anymore, because my angelic team took care of him, and so he no longer exists as a spirit. But they said he was pure evil, and he was out to do some harm. Yeah. So yeah, he was out to do harm. So I guess, I've already kind of warned people, don't go looking for this stuff. Please, please, please. What to do about spirits in your location. So if you feel like there's a spirit where you are, the best thing to do is just to talk to them and explain how they're making you feel. If they're making you uneasy or nervous, just tell them. Just say, you know what, you're making me feel this way. I don't like it. Because they do hear you. They do understand you. They know your intentions, so you can't trick or lie to a spirit. So if you ever want them to just go say, you know what, I'm not comfortable sharing my space with you. Now, if they refuse to leave, because I've had that happen in a house that I used to own, sometimes it's because they're attached, and it's much harder to get them out, but it can be done. I mean, like the guy at the Molly Brown house in the basement, he's so attached to that place that we go in there time after time, and he doesn't want to leave.
He's not going.
Yeah, he's not.
But there's also the spirit that might be a loved one that's trying to say they're okay. They might sit on your bed. You don't want those guys to go. And, those are comforting spirits, but they might scare you at first. But, loved ones come back, too, into our lives, in our houses and things, too.
Well, and you have to set up boundaries. And as a medium, I think all mediums know, you have to set up boundaries. So I usually will say, I only allow guides, angels, and loved ones in my space, which is my home. Anything else cannot come in, and you have to stay outside, So that's what everybody should really do. And all you have to do is make it an intention. You don't have to be somebody like me or Mary to make that intention for yourself. Let's see. I think a lot of times people reach out to me because spirits are making noises. And what I usually tell people about that is they like the attention it brings. Sometimes if they don't like you, though, they will do it to scare you or chase you out. But generally, in my experience, those are earthbound spirits. Like the guy at the Molly Brown house, he's definitely earthbound. Earthbound means they haven't crossed over yet. But the spirits who have crossed over, like the loved ones, they generally will not try to scare you on purpose unless it's going to help you in some way. So that's why you just need to talk to them and tell them, hey, you're kind of freaking me out here. I tell people too, and you might too, Mary, a spirit should never make you afraid. And if they do, it's really bad behavior that they've learned over time, like the guy in the cemetery. So that's why it's so important to cross them over, because if you don't, they just get stronger and can hurt somebody.
So I think there were more than one there. I know that they were being surrounded. You could hear it from all sides, and they were manifesting. And I mean, it was more than just one. I know one hopped in your car with you, but my God.
Yeah. And those ones probably backed off, the other ones. But the evil guy who was dissolved, he definitely, he made it his mission to come after me. So, but he learned a tough lesson. So, you know, he's gone. But, you know, if you're going to open the door to the spirit world for yourself, just beware. You really need to know what you're doing. You know, and as the living people, what I tell people when I have class is living humans have a responsibility to those left behind. So please be respectful, kind, compassionate, and try to help them gently move on. You know, crossing over is a very natural process for anyone who dies. You know, it's just like water that runs downhill. If the process is not interrupted, it just happens naturally, right? So people will say, well, what makes a spirit not cross over? And, you know, it's their own personal reasons. I think it's due to a serious tragedy of their death. Some of them don't accept that their life has ended, like the girl in the cemetery that whispered hi. She was young and she didn't want to go. You know, like I said before, it can be religious beliefs. It could be they don't want to be punished, like that guy in the Molly Brown house from the robbery. He would not leave because he thought he was still hiding out. So I thought that was interesting. And I'm going to talk more about how to cross spirits over in another show I do at some point. Maybe I'll have you come back, Mary, for that. But as a medium, I mean, you don't have to be a medium to help spirits, but you should never mock the supernatural. My guides told me this once. They said, if you mock the supernatural or think it's not real, you become their prey and a target. So for like skeptics or narrow-minded people who don't usually believe in a whole lot, their guard is usually down. Those are the kind of people that tend to get attacked. People who drink excessively or abuse drugs become a target because it lowers your boundaries for spirit to come in and do whatever they want to you. They can make you think bad thoughts. They can make you behave badly, possibly hurt another person, right? So, you know, you got to be careful there with spirits. Have you had any other scary incidents besides the one in the cemetery, Mary?
The only other one that just screams at me is I was, you know, I love Gettysburg, the battlefield at Gettysburg. Haunted. I mean, I've heard cannons. You can stay on the battlefield till 10 o'clock at night, and then it's like a $5,000 fine if you're still on the battlefield. Well, there's this one bridge called Sachs Bridge. After Pickett's charge, he goes over there. Most of the people are wounded. They're going to crawl back across this bridge. It's called Sachs Bridge. Well, they're so wounded by the time they get down this hill, they leave them, a lot of the wounded soldiers, on the side of the river here. A flood comes in, kills all the soldiers. So I get the bright idea that I'm going to go on the Confederate side because I'm kicked off basically at 10. I'm kicked off and I'm still not done, you know, talking to the dead. I've got great stories at Gettysburg. But so I'm down there. I go down this dark path and all of a sudden I can hear tree limbs, like twigs breaking, leaves, and they're all around me. And then all of a sudden I felt the menacing. I could feel like menacing. I put my camera on and I saw this red thing manifest itself almost into the body of like it started like a mist and went into it started going into the body. I turned my camera off. I started backing out of there. But then I thought to myself, so I thought, oh God, that was a crazy one, girl. But you know, they're in the heat of battle. They are wounded. There's no women on the battlefield for the most part. What is this strange woman doing amongst these, you know, Confederate soldiers? So I thought, okay, get your nerve up, put your protection back on and go down. And it repeated itself. It went to just further down the path. They started surrounding me again. I thought, oh, this is dumb. And I apologized to them. I'm sorry that I, came into their area. I really felt bad because they're in the heat of battle still. They died in the heat of battle. And here I am, doing ghost hunting things. But I was by Devil's Den. And I was down there, trying to find spirit and everything. And I felt this warm, really warm thing came down on top of me. And my sister was up the hill. I said, take my picture now. And there's an orange orb over the top of me. And this man, he was an older man. And he said that I reminded him of his sister. And he said, it's time to leave the floor. It's time to leave the battlefield now. And he walked me up the hill, and I had like warm surrounding me. I mean, it was the greatest thing. I loved it there. I love Gettysburg because there's so many spirits in so many areas. You just sit down and they're there. But yes, I was surrounded near Sachs Bridge, and it was my fault. It was my fault. I walked into where they all were, and they had no clue what I was doing there. So I blame myself. But it was that same kind of menacing. What the hell are you doing here? I was a foreigner. I was the enemy. So,
right.
Yeah, but I do places all over, like London and all different places, and Bath, and, any place I go, I'm looking for spirit. I really don't have that kind of menacing. I haven't had that menacing only 2 times in my life. And that second one was you. I knew I shouldn't have gone down that path. I kept telling you, no, it's bad in here. It's really bad in here. But no,
I know.
Just a little bit further. And I thought, holy shit, I'm going to die here.
Oh, God, that was so crazy. I felt so bad afterward.
Yes.
My guides and angels said she had every right to be afraid. And I was like, okay.
You can feel when you're under attack. It's a threat. You can feel the threat. It's
energy.
It's the threat energy, and you're in danger. I mean, it's like you can't see it, but you're in danger. And that's what it was there, and that's what it was at Sachs Bridge at Gettysburg, too. I mean, it's like, okay, I know this is bad, but
yeah.
What can I say?
It's kind of like, people read energy every day, and you don't even realize it. If you walk into a room and there's a menacing, evil person like that doesn't have good intentions, I think most people would be able to pick up on that. There was an offness about a person, but they wouldn't understand what it is. But mediums, we're used to that because we know what it is. We know it's energy. We know, whether we need to back off.
What kind of energy? I love those cemeteries up there. And even if they're the raunchiest people or whatever, I just go up and say hi to them. And I just, I kind of listen to them. I don't judge them. And so that's why I was really surprised by what happened in that cemetery.
Well, that had never happened to me before, and I had been up there several times. So, yeah, that was just an experience that I think I needed to learn something from it, and in order to teach other people something from it, because I do teach psychic development. And so, yeah, I definitely did learn something new, and as I always do, I keep learning new things. But so what about London? What did you encounter in London?
Well, I was walking along the Thames, and I was walking next to the castle, and I heard this woman from this one area say, help me, help me, help me. And I thought, well, what the heck is that? So I went into the castle, of course, and I said, well, was there anybody ever in this area here? Was there any other woman that was ever imprisoned here? And he said, this beefeater said, nope. I went to another one. He said, oh, yeah, they held Anne Boleyn temporarily over in this tower here while her trial was going on. I thought, damn, that was like, she was yelling, help.
Oh.
And then I went into 10 Bells. This is the area of Jack the Ripper. That whole area is interesting. Also, Whitechapel. And I walked into 10 Bells, and that's where a lot of the prostitutes, and that's where they were murdered in that area too. And there was a man in there. I don't think he was a menacing man or anything like that, but he was just a man in there that made a very big, so he must have been in there since the 1700s or something. It's like the oldest pub in all of London. So, my head starts spinning, my ears start ringing, and I just know that sometimes I can smell them. It's almost like must. These kind of smell like must to me. Yeah, I walk in a building and go, what is that? And then I'll say to somebody, do you think your building is haunted? And it'll either go yes or no. And it's kind of funny. They'll go, no. And I'll go, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Almost as if I want to say, you're being blind to this. There's a man sitting over in the corner over there, and you're just not aware of him. So, I mean, sometimes I do boldly say, oh my God, it is haunted. It's so freaking haunted. I was in Bath and I went down where all the Romans used to bathe. That's that natural springs and stuff in Bath. And I'm sitting on this woods. They still have the original, stone benches there. I start smelling lavender. And I thought, what the heck is this? I'm smelling lavender. And there's nothing down there. There's no plants or anything down there. And so afterwards I went to the gift shop. I said, why is this? Is there lavender associated with this? And they said, oh, the Romans would put lavender down here. So when they were bathing and everything else, I went into this one room and I started taking pictures. My head started spinning. I've got orbs just flying through. It was one of the bathhouses, and back in the back corner where it's really dark, they were just like flying through there. Like all the Romans are still in Bath. It was probably an area of great debauchery, if you really want to know. A lot of things happened there that, probably. Anyway, so they're all still down there. They're all in the Bath. So if anybody goes to London, go take the train to Bath, go visit the Bath, because the Romans are all still down there. I was in Normandy, and this is D-Day, the beach where they did the bombing. We hit the cluster bombs up on the cliffs up there, and they have two now. There were German outposts. They have two open to the public. I found a third one, and it wasn't open to the public, but my brother and I went in there, and we started going in there, and it just looked fine at first. And then I said, oh my God, John, they're still in this bunker. So what happened is, because the cluster bombs hit, they died in these bunkers because of just the shock and everything else. And so I took 3 pictures. 1, it's normal. 2, there's something wrong. And by 3, it's all out orb city. And I yelled to my brother, I'm like, John, back the F out of here, get out now. Because again, when you go into like a war situation, like a Gettysburg or a war situation, you sometimes have soldiers who are still in the heat of battle, Yeah. So I was going, and I have those pictures, and I treasure those pictures. It's like, John, get the F out of here. Get the F out of here. So you really have to watch what you stumble into, because you really should know that some of these nooks and crannies in Europe are still active with a lot of people, Right. I always say, put your protection on, always have your protection on. But sometimes they scare me when they're like battlefield stuff,
Mm-hmm. Right. I would love to travel to London, or even Ireland, Scotland. I mean, gosh.
I didn't have so much adventures in Ireland. I was the Elephant Man, lived at this London hospital. This is where also all the prostitutes that were murdered were sent to the same London hospital. They took pity on the Elephant Man, and I swear this is so sad. And so inside there's a little tiny museum in this old hospital. The new hospital's built behind it, but nobody goes to the old hospital. They had the still skeleton of the Elephant Man there, and I stood in front of it, and I felt his pain. I felt everything. It was like I started crying, and it was just in front of the skeleton, like he was still there. Like I swear his thing was still there on the other side of the glass, and it was so painful. It was just
probably its energy. I bet
it was still there. It was very, very painful. And this is, again, the hospital, because it's in Whitechapel, where all the prostitutes were taken to. So, my God, London is, you can just turn a corner and you've got something else happening in London,
I know there's been many paranormal shows that will be in London, and it's so haunted. I watch those shows, and it scares me just watching it.
Sure. Yeah, but she was yelling out from the castle. She was yelling out, help me, help me.
Oh, that is such a sad story.
It is a sad story. And the first beefeater's like, nope, nobody there. And the second one, Anne Boleyn was there just before they beheaded her. It's like, oh, well, God, that explains, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tragic story if you ever.
But you have to just be open. If you're like a medium, or you're trying to help people, or you're trying to listen to the other side, you hear things a lot. You do hear things that kind of are shocking and kind of heartbreaking. I mean, sometimes they break my heart when they talk to us. They break my heart. They're so sad. They want to get a message to somebody, and they want to tell them they love them. They want to give them a hug. They miss them. This, that. It just breaks my heart sometimes. That's why you can do it. I can't do it all the time. I really can't do it all the time. It's too painful.
It is tough. I know. I've broken down during readings before, just because the emotions of somebody's relative is so overwhelming to me, especially when they're children.
Right.
That gets me every time, and I end up crying. But but you know what I was thinking about too, because you've been to Pompeii.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, do you remember? This is kind of on the same topic, and then I'll let you talk about Pompeii. But do you remember when we were giving readings to the VIPs at the Molly Brown house, and we had a little boy, and it was his birthday? Do you remember that crazy reading?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I first of all, when I saw the little boy walk in, I thought, oh God, how are we going to read a little boy? And then it just started coming on the little boy. It's like, whoa, this little boy.
His parents' eyes were like bugging out of their heads because, Mary and I both said, do you know what Pompeii is? Yeah, we're like, do you know what Pompeii is? He was probably like 8 years old, and we're like, do you know what Pompeii is? So you go ahead and tell that story.
Well, depending on which one we had like 3 little boys. The one was the one.
Do you remember? Okay, I'll tell it because I remember him so vividly.
Because I usually try to forget things sometimes.
It was one of the best readings that I remembered because. So he was this little boy with his mom and dad, and it was his birthday. And we did have 2 little boys that was their birthday.
You mean inside that time in the library?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you said. Oh my God! So this kid, he looked like a little Roman. When he sat down in front of me, I thought he was like a little Roman soldier. I thought he was a Roman, and he just reeked of like Pompeii. And I'm like, oh, is Pompeii resonate with you? Do you know? I just love Pompeii. I talk about Pompeii all the time. I love Pompeii. And so we had to tell him, look, that was a lifetime ago. You're not in this lifetime right now. He was like a little Roman that came in right in front of us. He just smelled like Pompeii. He looked like a little Roman. He was what, 8? Something like that. And we had to say, honey, that was a past lifetime. You've got to let that go. You're going to be a medical person in this life. You've got another job to do in this lifetime. You've got to release that. And his whole life revolved around Pompeii.
It was Pompeii. Yeah.
That's because he came from there. He probably died there, and he didn't give it up. And here he is, this little 8-year-old. What 8-year-old hangs on to Pompeii? I mean, it was crazy.
Well, I thought you remember.
I thought you were talking about the little boy that came in the back door. We said, do you see the closet doors open? He says, yes, the closet door's open. It's like, okay, now we know what you are.
Yeah. Oh, that was a different one. No, remember, because this little boy, that really sticks out in my head because I was seeing his whole past life in Pompeii, and so were you. But do you remember what his parents said? They said, guess what his birthday theme this year is? It was Pompeii.
He was like a crazy little Roman that just came in. He's 8. It's like that was a good one. That was a good one. We had to tell him that Pompeii's over, so we probably ruined his birthday for him.
We probably did kind of ruin his birthday, but that was a really cool, one of the coolest readings I've ever done. Because usually, it's hard to read for children unless you're getting into something like a past life, because they haven't lived long enough for us to really have a lot of loved ones on the other side and stuff, but.
He was living in Pompeii. So Pompeii, I went down to, I was walking the streets of Pompeii, and they've got it lot cleared. And there's bodies that are still, that were died in the Pompeii, in the, volcanic thing are still there and things like that. But I was in the stadium, and they were in the stadium. There was a sporting event that, when the eruption happened, they could see it happening. So, I mean, I picked that up, and then I went under the tunnels, like any sports, like Bronco Stadium, those underneath tunnels that they have. Yeah. So I went down there, and they were hiding. All these spirits were hiding in these tunnels still because they thought they could hide. But the heat vapors came and, got rid of all of them. But they went down there to hide when they saw it happening at the stadium, and they were all still in the tunnels. I should have crossed them over, but, I wasn't smart enough. I was more shocked to find them down in the tunnels, still hiding. I know. I'm a bad medium. I should have crossed them over, but I was shocked that they were still hiding from Vesuvius,
That's so bad, yeah.
So I guess I have to go back to Pompeii.
Yes, sometime. That is your
That'll be my punishment. That's my mission. Go all the way back to Pompeii and cross those guys in the stadium over.
Yes.
Maybe some other medium that's on their way over there can do that for us.
Yeah, really? A shout out to any mediums going to Pompeii.
Go into the underground, underneath the stadiums where people, they, just like any stadium down, what's that called? Those tunnels, those lower tunnels, that people walk through, they move up to the seats. Right. They're all hiding down there. But yeah, that little boy, that little 8-year-old Roman that came in there was the craziest things. That was fun. That was a lot of fun to try to help him to say, hey, darling, that one's over.
Right. That was the best reading.
We have to move on. Time to move on.
Yeah, that was crazy. I do love that story.
Yeah.
I just love it so much. And then I guess we have like 15 minutes left. We can talk a little bit about Cheeseman Park if you want to.
I'd rather not, but you go ahead. I mean, Cheeseman Park's sad for me. Cheeseman Park, it was the city cemetery, 5,000 bodies. Okay, now it's down where people want to buy real estate, so we've got to get those bodies out of there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll hire this man who puts these like 1-foot coffins. He puts a head in here. He puts a femur in here. He puts a foot in here. And he says, I got them all. Pay me for all these coffins that I've moved. And he missed huge whole sections. Like there's still 2,000 bodies there. You can still go and stamp out a grave there. A lot of women, a lot of children died from, disease and things like that. It's really kind of a sad. I don't know how people jog through there, to be honest with you. It's kind of spooky going through there.
Right. Right. But we've gotten some really good evidence, of ghosts and stuff there, and it's very active. That park is still active, and people visiting the park, because it's a beautiful park with a marble pavilion. People are still having experiences, even in the daytime.
It's a pavilion. There's some woods, there's some trees right around that pavilion. And one of my friends was just over there kind of doing some ghosty honey stuff. And she actually sprained some, her ACLs and stuff like that they pushed her so hard she fell and sprained it. I remember last time, one of the times I was out there with you, I would not go into this stand of trees. It was just too menacing. You got to know where if you feel it's menacing, you can't go into the stand of trees. You can't go there. Stay out.
Yeah.
As jogging around, there's just some cold spots. All of a sudden, you're going to hit a cold spot on the jogging path. I wonder what that is.
Well, yeah, and we take the public out there too during some of our free events, and we take our equipment, our paranormal equipment, and I tell you, my RK2 meters go to red every single time we're walking around in there, and we've gotten some really good pictures from full-bodied apparitions in that park. But there's so many stories of people seeing a man, which I think I crossed him over recently when we were there, because a man came up to me in a gown, like a hospital gown, and he was just like, hey, what's up, what's going on, because we were tapped in, turned on, and we were doing our medium stuff, and I basically had to tell him that he died, and he goes, I died? So I felt kind of bad, he was really confused, and then he's like, wow, how did I die? So then all of a sudden a nurse in spirit came to me, and she's like, I have been trying to tell this guy for how many ever years that he, so she told me he died of an illness. So I told him, you've died of an illness and it's time for you to go. So I crossed him over, and but then there were other stories of people during the day encountering this guy. And really? He would go up to people and say, hey, what's going on? What are you doing here? And people would just look at him like, who are you? And why are you in a hospital gown wandering around the park, right? So there's a lot of weird stuff. And when you're walking through that park in Denver, you fall into like little divots. You can see that
those
outline.
body divots. Those you can stamp out a body divot where they were buried. These little graves, you can still stamp it out because those old coffins were just made of wood. So of course, over time, the ceiling of the coffin breaks, and that's what causes the divot.
Right. And so, people go and have picnics in this park with their family. And they're really like picnicking on a cemetery, which they don't know. A lot of them don't know the history. And so, it's really a creepy place to go if people ever visit Denver. It's called Cheeseman Park. And man, that is
I don't really like it. That's not one of my first places I want to go. I don't know. There's just something uncomfortable over there. So
it's all the deaths. Yeah, there's been recent deaths. The park was known for a long time to be like a drug hangout for quite a while. I think the police have kind of tried to clean it up a little bit, but yeah, it's a really shady park. So we usually only go in groups when we do free events there. But yeah, that's a crazy history. So yeah. So anything else? Do you have any other fun stories for us before we go?
Oh, I'm trying to think fun ones. I guess I just have fun ones with just spirit that I see a lot of times that just want to give messages to people that are standing around us. I don't know. I guess I don't know what I would say. It's a blessing, and sometimes it's not a blessing.
Right.
It's not a blessing, but if you can give a message and touch someone's heart from the other side, I think that's pretty darn special. So
it is. I agree with you totally. But one thing I don't do is for me personally, I won't walk up to somebody like they do on TV, and I will not tell them, "Hey, your grandmother's there," or whatever, because to me, it feels intrusive. I don't know what other people's religious beliefs are. And so I'm always afraid to intrude on that because, people look at you like you're cuckoo.
Well, around the Molly Brown house, they know I'm kind of, whatever. They go, "Hey, do you see anybody today? Is anybody around?" So a lot of times, yes, I will. If somebody asks me, as in some of the places I'm at, I'll say, "Yeah, by the way, did you know your grandfather's here and this and this and this?" Yeah. And so that's it. But no, I wouldn't go up to the general public and go, because, oh my gosh, that's way too intrusive to go into somebody's life. My God, maybe they're having a bad day or something, and you go, "Oh, your dad's here." I don't want to put anybody in a bad mood or anything.
I know. And people think, the shows, that's what they do. But I got to tell you,
no,
that's
we don't.
really kind of not what they do.
We don't that.
No, I went to school for television, and so basically what happens when these people are like a Teresa Caputo and they go into a location, first they have to get the approval from the location, and then everybody who's inside that building has to sign off that this is a person who's here to read you, and you can stay or you can go. So all the people in there know she could possibly give them a reading. It's not really like you think where they just walk up to you. She's already scouting out who she's going to read for. So, but it's kind of misleading to the public because they're like, "I wonder why other mediums don't come up to me,"
Exactly. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants that side, that touch from the other side. They do. They want it. And I can understand why they want it. But it's not like that. I mean, she kind of spoils it for what a medium really is because, it's kind of a little theatrics there. And,
Well, it's a show. Yeah. And the one thing I do love about her show in particular is that when she gives readings to people who come to see her or she does group readings, she actually donates all the money.
That's nice.
Yeah, she donates all of it to charities that people pick out.
Can I down on Edwards? Well, see, okay, so he has the whole crowd, and he'll just do like 5 people, and they'll go on and on and on about one person. I trained under him just for a little bit, and yeah, okay. And it was like a 3-day training thing.
Right.
Anyway, I just thought, gosh, share the love, man. Don't just go on one person's life for the next 30 minutes, because there's a lot of people that want to be touched. There's just a lot of people that need to be touched. These are hard. Sometimes it's rock and roll out here,
Right.
People need a little kind touch. But he just kept going, one person forever, and I was like, please move on. We got that, this person. Good, move on. So that's my only little down on John Edwards. But
oh, really? Yeah.
I'm not going to share it.
I studied under, it was like you said, it was a short, like week-long training or whatever. But I trained with Lisa Williams. She had a show on the LMN network, I believe. Merv Griffin actually brought her from the UK to the United States. And so she got a show out of it. So I trained with her and John Holland. He's an author also, and he's a psychic medium. He's very well known. But yeah, they do. Sometimes mediums get stuck on.
We should encourage people, if you're interested, seek out a training like Wendy's training. Seek out a comfortable spot where you can try to give a message, or where you can try to learn to talk to the other side in a safe,
non-judgmental, I guess.
Non-judgmental. It's just a safe environment where if you think you have the ability, because there was an older woman today at the Denver Women's Press Club, and she's like, I can hear people talking, but I don't want to tell anybody that because I don't want them to be crazy. So a lot of people are probably like that. They don't want anybody to think they're crazy, and they're having these experiences. So seek out a trainer.
Right. And so basically, and I can just tell our listeners, I mean, if you live in the Denver metro area, I have a meetup site called Academy of Metaphysics in Aurora. And so we have 3 teachers. We have Jennifer Garcia and Sue Yin Castro and we're all mediums. We all left the corporate world to become mediums and really embrace teaching. And so, yeah, we have classes that anybody, the general public can sign up for. And it's a very, it goes from basic training as a psychic medium to very advanced. So, if anybody wants to look
you don't offer judgment, there's no judgment in your training, which is good. Yeah. You don't want judgment to go, oh, that was a crazy thing to say.
Right. Well, and I encourage other mediums to start meetups in their own locations, in their own towns, and offer this kind of training. I mean, we only charge like $20 a class. So it's not much, So I just encourage everybody to get out there and help all these people who really do have the ability. They just don't know where to start. They don't know how to embrace it. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing to help people. Well, yes. Mary, it is already, 2 hours went by really fast, and it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I really hope you'll come back again and talk to me. I'm sure we'll have more stories to talk about.
Absolutely. And, I'm glad that you allow me to share these stories with everybody, too. If they have them, they're not crazy. It's just, it's just what happens to us.
Yep. It's how we live, right? Welcome to our world.
Yeah, welcome to our world. Thank you, Wendy. I will say good night to everybody. Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you. Good night, Mary. So there you go, folks. If you enjoyed tonight's show, I hope you did. Be sure to tune in next Saturday. I'm going to be talking to psychic medium Steve Godfrey. He is the former host of the Other Side radio show. Be sure to like my Facebook page at Wendy Lucero, Conversations with the Other Side. I will post inspirational messages and other stories there. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. Wishing you all health, wealth, and love now and in the new year. Good night.